Have you ever met someone who did not look very outstanding when they were young? Maybe even a little harsh or tired. But somehow, as the years went by, their whole presence became softer, warmer, almost glowing, as if even the wrinkles on their face were full of blessing. And have you also seen the opposite? Someone who was stunning when they were 20, admired everywhere they went, yet by middle age their face looks tense, bitter, heavy, as if every line is carved by anger and greed rather than peace and wisdom. Welcome back to the channel, my friend. Today we are going to talk about something we all carry but rarely really understand: our face. Not just the nose and eyes you see in the mirror, but the living map of emotion, karma, and inner practice that slowly reveals itself year after year. The original article behind this script asked a very simple question: why do some people seem to grow more blessed as they get older, while others look more and more exhausted, even if they use the same skin care and have the same external conditions? The answer it pointed to was not in expensive products or lucky genes, but in the invisible work of the heart. In this long-form story-style script, I want to walk with you through that idea in a way that feels like sitting down with an old friend. We will look at how your face changes with your mood and habits, how eyes, mouth, forehead and lines quietly record what you have loved, feared, and chosen again and again. We will meet people whose faces transformed over time, for better and for worse. And we will see how ancient wisdom about karma and spiritual practice is written right there between your eyebrows. By the end, I hope you will no longer stare at the mirror just judging whether you look pretty or ugly, young or old. Instead, you will be able to ask a much deeper question when you see your own reflection. What kind of life am I writing on this face? Let us begin with a very simple observation that you already know is true from your own experience. Even if you have never said it out loud, think about a friend who often complains, who rarely smiles sincerely, who is always suspicious or resentful. Now think about a friend who is generally kind, who laughs easily, who tries to see the bright side without denying reality. Even if the two had similar features at birth, after 10 or 20 years, they will not look the same. The first friend's face tends to become stiff. The muscles around the mouth tighten from frequent sneers. The eyes become sharp, scanning for threats and faults. The lines between the eyebrows deepen from constant frowning. There is a heaviness around the cheeks, a dullness around the temples, as if the whole face is carrying too much invisible weight. The second friend's face tends to open. The corners of the eyes carry smile lines that somehow do not make them look old but gentle. The forehead relaxes more easily. The jaw softens. Even when they are tired, there is something bright behind the tiredness, like light behind a thin curtain. This is not superstition. It is physiology mixed with psychology, seasoned with karma. Every emotion you experience is not only in your mind. It moves your muscles, changes your breathing, releases chemicals into your blood. When you repeat the same emotion again and again, those patterns become carved into your physical shape. Anger tightens the jaw, lifts the chest in a defensive way, narrows the eyes. Fear pulls the eyebrows up and together, tightens the mouth, shrinks the neck. Greed and craving lean the head forward, sharpen the gaze, flicker the eyes toward what they want. Compassion softens the gaze, relaxes the forehead, opens the chest. Gratitude releases tension around the mouth, lets the breath drop deeper, brightens the eyes. When you are 20, your skin is still elastic enough to bounce back after an emotional storm. When you are 40, 50, 60, the storms you have repeated many times leave traces that do not fully disappear. The face becomes a permanent weather report of the climate inside your heart. This is why the original article said something like a young person's beauty is often borrowed from their parents and from past blessings. But an older person's face is largely self-created. You may be born with symmetrical features, a sharp nose, big eyes. That is borrowed beauty. How you use those gifts, how you live, how you treat others, how you digest your suffering, that is earned beauty or earned harshness. To see this more clearly, let us follow 3 people through their middle years and watch how their faces changed as their hearts changed. The first one is a woman named Laura. In her 20s, Laura was the kind of person who turned heads when she walked into a room. She had clear skin, a bright smile, shiny hair. People used words like goddess to describe her. She grew used to the feeling of being admired. At first, she was quite friendly, but as the praise poured in, something subtle changed. She began to measure almost everything by whether it added to or threatened her beauty. She would be pleasant to people who flattered her, cold to those who ignored her. She secretly despised classmates she considered less attractive. She believed that good looks meant she deserved special treatment. In relationships, she played with people's feelings, confident that someone else would always appear. If a boyfriend displeased her even slightly, she cut him off without reflection. "I can do better," she would tell herself in the mirror. In her early 30s, life gave her some challenges. A stressful job, a sick parent, a relationship that ended painfully when she discovered her partner had been unfaithful. Instead of using these events as chances to deepen her understanding and compassion, she reacted with increasing resentment. She thought, "How dare he betray me? With all that I am, how dare life treat me like this, when I have always been the star?" Her anger and entitlement did not stay inside. They moved into her face. By her late 30s, she still had symmetrical features, but something had hardened. The space between her eyebrows had a permanent line from frowning and judging. The corners of her mouth often turned down when she was not consciously posing for a photo. Her eyes, once full of natural sparkle, now often looked sharp and tired, scanning for who might hurt her next. People still said she was beautiful, but fewer people said they felt comfortable around her. Some even said quietly she looks good, but there is something in her face that makes me nervous. On the surface, she still had what many envied, but she did not feel blessed. She felt lonely, unsafe, constantly comparing her reflection to younger faces on screens, fearing the loss of what she believed was her only power. Her face was telling the truth of her inner world. Now meet another person, named Maria. In her 20s, Maria was not anyone's idea of a model. She had rather plain features, a bit of acne, and a tendency to blush easily. She felt shy in large groups. When she compared herself to polished college classmates, she often told herself private stories of inferiority. But Maria had something else: a warm, steady heart. She cared deeply about people's feelings. She would sit with friends who were sad, even if she did not know what to say, just to accompany them. She worked part-time to support herself and still found time to volunteer occasionally. She also had her struggles. She sometimes envied prettier girls, sometimes felt invisible. But instead of letting envy turn into bitterness, she tried to turn it into motivation. "I cannot control my features," she thought, "but I can become someone whose presence makes others relax." In her 30s, she went through stress-to-work changes, a difficult breakup, taking care of aging parents. She cried many nights, yet she refused to let pain make her rule. When life hurt her, she did not respond by trying to hurt others back. She read about inner growth, started basic meditation, and regularly asked herself, what kind of person do I want to become by the time I am old? Someone whose stories are just about who betrayed me, or someone whose stories are about what I learned and how I helped? By the time she was in her 40s, something had quietly changed in her face. Her skin was not flawless. There were fine lines around her eyes from years of laughter and tears. But those lines gave her a gentle radiance. Her eyes looked clear and kind. The corners of her mouth naturally tilted upward when she was at rest. People meeting her for the first time rarely said she is hot, but many said, I feel so comfortable with her, or I could trust this person, or there is something really attractive about her. I cannot explain it. That inexplicable attractiveness was her accumulated kindness, patience, and honesty written into her features. When she aged further into her 50s, strangers sometimes offered her help on the street simply because her face looked approachable. Younger colleagues came to her for advice. Children felt safe around her. Her face was not the face of a magazine model. It was the face of a blessed elder in training. Now let us look at a third person, a man named Kevin, to see another pattern. Kevin was smart and charming when young. He loved jokes, especially those that made others look foolish. He liked to win, whether in games, arguments, or romance. He had a good smile, which he used to get what he wanted, but he did not care much about the impact of his words or actions on others. As he aged, his career had ups and downs. Some of his decisions, made from greed or ego, hurt colleagues. Some of his relationships ended with people feeling used. He told himself that this was just the way of the world. In his 40s, he began to notice something in the mirror that bothered him more than gray hair. His resting face looked suspicious. The lines beside his nose were deep from smirking. His mouth had a habitual twist, as if he were always half ready to mock someone. His eyes narrowed easily, as if waiting for the next chance to criticize. He tried to fix it with skin care, exercise, even small cosmetic procedures. But those changes were like repainting a wall while ignoring the cracks underneath. The real issue was in his heart, a long-term habit of seeing life as a battlefield, people as opponents, and every interaction as a chance to prove himself superior. The face only obeyed. These three stories are not about judging people for their looks. They are about understanding that your face, especially as you age, is not just an accidental shape. It is a living record of where your mind has spent most of its time. Once you see this, the old phrase, your face hides a lifetime of karma and practice, becomes very real. Let us now look at some specific areas of the face and how they often reflect inner patterns, not in a rigid fortune-telling way, but as a kind of wisdom mirror. Think of the eyes first. Eyes are often called the windows of the soul. That is not poetic exaggeration. You can sense very quickly whether someone's gaze makes you feel at ease or tense. Eyes that constantly look sideways, darting around, rarely meeting others directly, usually belong to someone hiding something or someone deeply anxious. Eyes that stare too hard, drilling into others, often reveal aggression or a need to control. Eyes that are always dull, with no light, even when the person smiles, can indicate long-term depression or deep hopelessness. Eyes that are clear, steady, and warm tend to belong to people who are relatively honest with themselves, who do not carry as much hidden guilt, and who sincerely care about others. You do not gain such eyes by buying something. You gain them by gradually cleaning your heart of too much deception. self-cruelty, and self-betrayal. Next, look at the space between the eyebrows and the forehead. The lines between the eyebrows are often called worry lines or anger lines. They deepen when you frequently frown in irritation or stress. Everyone has some, because life is not easy. But some people's lines are carved like deep valleys from endlessly repeating "why is everything so unfair?" or "people are so annoying," or "the world is against me." A forehead that is always tight, with veins visible and muscles pulled, speaks of someone who cannot relax, who always feels the need to fight or control. On the other hand, a forehead that can relax easily, where lines appear but also soften, usually belongs to someone who has learned some level of trust in life, not blind optimism, but a willingness to let go of what they cannot control. Then, the mouth. The mouth reveals more than words. People who often speak harshly, who like to gossip, to complain, to humiliate, to lie, gradually shape their own mouths into tools of harm. The corners may turn down. The lips may look thin and tight. People who practice speaking kindly, who avoid unnecessary gossip, who choose honesty even when it is hard, tend to have mouths that look softer. Their resting expression is less bitter. Even when they are not talking, the energy of their speech is visible. There is also the jaw. A constantly clenched jaw, even at rest, can indicate deep resentment, unexpressed anger, or a need to clench against life. A jaw that has strength but can soften suggests inner power without constant aggression. Finally, look at the overall expression when the face is resting, not posing. Many people look okay in photos because they deliberately pose, but their true face appears when they are not performing, staring out of a window, reading, waiting in a line. Some faces collapse into bitterness as soon as the pose ends. Others fall into sadness. Some remain open and neutral. Pay attention to your own resting face. Sometimes, not to judge, but to learn. Stand in front of a mirror when you are not trying to look any particular way. Notice what your face does naturally. Then ask gently, what story is this face telling about how I have lived so far? If the story feels heavy, you do not need to panic or hate yourself. You can simply acknowledge, okay, this is where I am. But the story is not finished. I am still writing. From the viewpoint of karma and spiritual practice, this is the most important message of all. Your face, like your destiny, is not completely fixed. It is partially given and partially created. You cannot choose your first chapter, your genes, the basic type of your features. But you are continually writing the later chapters through your habitual moods, thoughts, and actions. So the real issue is not am I pretty enough, but what kind of inner climb am I reinforcing every day? And what will that do to my face in life if I keep going for 10 more years? Let us bring this even closer to home with a simple exercise in imagination. Picture two versions of your future self 10 years from now. In the first version, you keep your current habits unchanged. You respond to stress the same way. You hold grudges the same way. You complain the same way. You treat your body, sleep, and mind the same way. Try to see that future face. Maybe a little more lined, maybe a little more tired. What kind of lines will they be? Now in the second version, imagine that starting today, you make small but real changes in how you handle your inner world. You still feel anger, but you stop feeding it for days. You still get hurt, but you practice letting go instead of replaying the wound 100 times. You still fail sometimes, but you speak to yourself with patience instead of endless self-attack. You practice small daily gratitude, small acts of kindness, small moments of silence. Try to see that future face. The same bones, the same general structure, but the expression is different. The light in the eyes is different. The way the mouth rests is different. Which one do you want to grow into? You might say, of course, I want the second one. Then the next question is, what am I doing today to move toward that face? This is where inner practice enters the story of your appearance. Spiritual traditions are not obsessed with faces for shallow reasons. They are interested in the face as a reflection of the heart. For example, when you practice loving kindness meditation, you are not just imagining nice things. You are actually changing the habit patterns of your nervous system. When you wish well for yourself, for loved ones, for strangers, for difficult people, you train your mind to widen. Over time, this reduces the grip of chronic hostility. As hostility softens, your facial muscles gradually adopt new default positions. The brow loosens a little. The eyes meet others more gently. The mouth rests less in a tight line. You might still have the same wrinkles, but they sit on a different kind of face. When you practice patience, catching yourself before you explode, breathing, observing your anger instead of letting it drive you, you are also changing your face. Every time you avoid yelling at someone or tearing them down, you break one possible line of harshness that could have been carved deeper into your forehead or jaw. When you practice honesty in speech, refusing to lie just to look good, refusing to gossip just to feel interesting, you protect your mouth from becoming the tool of your own downfall. People whose words are mostly clean are often trusted. They are welcomed into circles where deeper opportunities are shared. That in turn shapes their environment, which shapes their stress level, which again shapes their face. When you practice gratitude, naming even small blessings instead of only obsessing over lack, your eyes change. They are less likely to be filled with constant dissatisfaction. There is more light. When you practice generosity, giving time, attention, or material help within your ability, your whole presence shifts. You move from the posture of a hungry beggar waiting for life to feed you into the posture of someone who knows they are already connected to something abundant. That subtle dignity shows on the face. Of course, this is not to say that all spiritual practitioners will look like angels with perfect skin. People still age, still get sick, still have rough days. The point is not perfection, but direction. Are you aging toward a face that reflects a heart becoming more open and wise? Or toward a face that reflects a heart becoming more closed and bitter? This is not something anyone else can ultimately decide for you. It is something you feel when you are honest with yourself. Sometimes people ask, is it possible to have a blessed-looking face even if life has been hard? Yes. In fact, many truly blessed elders have had very hard lives. They lost loved ones, endured poverty, faced injustice. But somewhere along the way, they decided not to let those things make them cruel. They turned suffering into empathy, not poison. You can see it in their eyes. They do not deny your pain when you talk to them. They nod slowly, having walked through their own fires. But there is also a quiet conviction in them that says, even with all this, life can still hold meaning. That conviction is the deepest blessing of all. It is written into the lines of their face like a secret prayer. If you have ever been comforted just by sitting near such a person, you know what I mean. Now, in case you are thinking, this all sounds beautiful, but my face already looks tired and harsh. Is it too late? Let me speak to that fear directly. It is never too late to begin changing the direction of your face and your destiny. As long as you are still breathing, no, you may not erase the wrinkles you already have, but you can decide what kind of stories those wrinkles will carry in the next chapters. Will they deepen as records of endless complaint, or will they start to carry more laughter, more acceptance, more understanding? Even if you are already in your 50s, 60s, 70s, you can soften the expression behind the lines. People will feel the difference. And if you are still young, you have an incredible opportunity. You can think of your current face as wet clay rather than hard rock. The habits you form now will become your sculpture later. You do not need to obsess over this in a vain way. You simply need to remember from time to time that every time you choose kindness over cruelty, you are also doing a tiny beauty treatment on your future face. So what can you actually do, starting today, to walk toward becoming one of those people who look more blessed as they age? Here are some simple, real-world shifts you can start practicing without announcing them to anyone. First, when you catch yourself about to explode in anger, give yourself a few seconds of pause. You may still speak firmly. You may still set boundaries, but see if you can avoid letting your face and voice become weapons. Each time you succeed even a little, you prevent a bit of harshness from engraving itself deeper. Second, when you realize you have been holding a grudge for a long time, ask yourself, who is actually suffering more from this grudge, them or me? You might discover that you are carrying a weight on your own face and shoulders, while the other person lives freely. That realization can motivate you to begin the process of forgiving, not as a favor to them, but as a gift to your own future. Third, practice gentle smiling, not forced, robotic smiling, but letting your face relax into a soft half-smile from time to time, even when you are alone. Science shows that the muscles involved in smiling can send signals back to the brain that lighten mood. Spiritually, it reminds your whole system that you are capable of joy even in difficulty. Over years, this becomes part of your natural expression. Fourth, spend more time with people whose faces you admire for their warmth rather than their silver-screen beauty. Watch how they listen, how they react to others' mistakes, how they talk about the past. You will likely find the same pattern. They do not waste too much energy attacking others. They focus on growing themselves and helping where they can. That is why their faces feel blessed. Fifth, spend a little time each day in some form of contemplative practice. It could be simple breath awareness, repeating a sacred name, reading something wise and letting it sink in. The point is to regularly give your mind a rest from constant criticism, comparison, and consumption. This resting is like smoothing out a wrinkled piece of paper. Over time, even if some folds remain, the overall surface becomes less chaotic. That calm will show in your eyes. As we move toward the end of this sharing, I want to circle back to where we started, the question of why some people seem more blessed as they age. It is easy to think it is all luck, lucky marriage, lucky career, lucky health. And yes, external conditions matter, but beneath those, there is something we rarely recognize: the inner work of the person. People who look and feel more blessed in later years often have these things in common. They have learned to let go of some grudges. They have practiced kindness in small, repeated ways. They have faced their suffering without turning it into weapons against others. They have spent time cultivating something beyond material gain: wisdom, compassion, faith, or deep understanding. They have not been perfect. They have made mistakes, but they have not let those mistakes harden them into permanent bitterness. Their faces reflect that. You, right now, are somewhere on that spectrum. Maybe you already see some gentleness in your expression, the result of your efforts to grow. Maybe you also see some tightness, the result of wounds and unprocessed emotions. Both are okay. Both are honest. The question is simply, from today on, which side do you want to feed more? If you remember that your face is not your enemy, but your messenger, you can use it as a guide rather than a source of pure insecurity. Next time you look in the mirror and feel tempted to criticize every flaw, pause, look into your own eyes and ask, what kind of heart do I want these eyes to reflect in 10 years? Run your fingers lightly along your forehead and imagine it relaxing under the weight of one less grudge. Notice the corners of your mouth and imagine them learning to rest a little more upward because of one more decision each day to be kind rather than cruel. You do not need to tell anyone you are doing this inner work. It will show by itself. Those who can see will see. Those who cannot see are not your problem. If this long script has resonated with you, if it made you remember the face of an elder you admire, or made you look at your own reflection with new eyes, I warmly invite you to share a little in the comments. Tell us about someone whose face became more and more blessed as they aged. Was it a grandparent, a teacher, a neighbor, a stranger on a bus? What did their face teach you about how to live? And if you feel brave, you can also share one small change you want to make in your inner habits so that your future face can carry more peace, love, and wisdom than it does today. If you wish to keep walking together on this path of exploring karma, destiny, spiritual practice, and everyday life, remember to subscribe, like, and comment so that this little corner of the internet can continue. If it is within your ability and you feel moved, you can also consider supporting the channel through membership, helping to sustain the time and energy needed for these long, heart-centered sharing. Whatever you choose, as you leave this video and eventually face your own mirror again, I hope you will be able to say to yourself with gentle determination, I may not control the features I was born with, but I can decide what kind of heart I grow. And as my heart becomes wider, kinder, and wiser, my face, year by year, will quietly follow. There are moments when you see something, and your heart simply whispers, this one is meant for me. Bracelet carries more than beads. It carries intention, protection, and quiet strength. Something to guide your thoughts and keep your spirit steady. If you felt that gentle pull toward any of the bracelets shown, the purchase link is waiting in the description, and the full collection is displayed on our channel store. Follow your intuition. It rarely leads you wrong.